Good evening, everybody. We might get started now. It's 5:30. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to the people of the gallery that are here, making it out on a chilly night. It's nice and warm in here, which is great, because last time we were in here, it was like a fridge. So hopefully it won't get too hot. If we could please stand and for the service acknowledgement and acknowledgement of country rather. The City of Victor Harbor acknowledges the Ramangeri and the Narrandjeri people, the traditional custodians of this land and our surrounding waters where we live and work. We acknowledge their deep connection to country and we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. This respect is extended to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across Australia. Would someone like to read the diversity statement, please?
The City of Victor Harbor is committed to diversity, equity and inclusion. We respect people of all ages, abilities, genders, sexualities, religions, beliefs, cultures and backgrounds.
We recognise the brave individuals who have served and continue to serve our nation. We remember those who have lost their lives and paid the ultimate sacrifice to our country.
Thank you. And would someone like to say the prayer? Thank you, Braden.
Almighty God, we ask you to bless this council and allow it to be an agent of change to the people of this city and beyond. Direct and prosper its deliberations to the honouring of your name and the welfare of the people whom it serves. Amen.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. We have a few apologies tonight. Councillor Quinton is away, Councillor Kemp is away, and Councillor Schofield is also unfortunately not well. There are no items lying on the table or have been adjourned, and so we move to 5.1, the minutes of the previous meeting, which was on the 26th of May. Would someone like to move that those minutes be confirmed as true and accurate? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And seconding those, please, Councillor Mann. Do either of you have any questions about those minutes? Does anyone have any questions? All those in favour? Those against? You're against, Councillor?
I wasn't here. I've read the minutes, but I don't know. I can't say if they are true and correct.
Okay. That's carried, thank you. There are no deputations, and we have two lots of questions from the gallery. The first one is from Mr. Andrews from Council Watch, and the second one is from Mr. Charles from Council Watch. Mr. Andrews. Terry Andrews.
Yes, it's his question, Mayor, but he asked me to read it for him.
In the future, could you please ask him to let us know if he's having somebody else? Are you representing Council Watch?
Yes.
You are?
Yep.
Please go ahead with your question.
At the briefing session held on the 11th of June, Councillor Stuart Burns, speaking on behalf of members of the public seated in the gallery, made a respectful request to submit questions.
Sorry, wrong question.
Why is it the wrong question?
You're asking the question that Peter Charles from Council Watch wanted to ask.
Mr. Charles is answering that question. You asked first for the question from Terry Andrews.
Yes, and I've got Terry Andrews' question here, which is different from the question that you're asking.
Yes, that's it.
What do you mean, yes, that's it?
Well, this is Mr. Andrews' question. Mr. Charles will be dealing with with his first one, the first question.
You are asking Mr. Charles's question, not Mr. Andrews' question.
Right, Mr. Charles he's going to ask. If you want to do the the gallery question number 1 first, then
I've got
Mr.
two
Charles.
lots of questions here. Both question 1 is Mr. Charles, procedural equality and mayoral conduct. And then question 2, unequal treatment at public contributions. I've got 2 questions here from Mr. Andrews. Question 1, request for independent ministerial clarification. And question 2, upholding confidence in legislative governance. You, I understand, are asking Mr. Andrews questions. The first question is relating to request for independent ministerial clarification.
Yes, that's the one that perhaps if you want to do the one in order, the gallery question number 1, ask Mr. Charles to come forward and present that one, because you asked me to come forward first.
I asked Terry Andrews to come forward for the questions that he had.
Yeah, and you had already emails back from the council staff to say that that was okay to have that. So, yeah, what do you want to do first, Mayor?
Well, as
does it matter? Isn't it the point that both questions have been approved to be asked, and they should be asked?
Usually what happens, and you would know this as being a past elected member, that if a question from the gallery comes to us, we will say, you know, if it's an appropriate question, yes, we're more than happy to answer it. And we had some questions, 2 questions from Terry Andrews.
Yep.
One question from Terry Andrews was related to request for independent ministerial clarification. And the question 2 from Terry Andrews is upholding confidence in legislative governance. Terry Andrews isn't here, and I understand that you are here asking those questions on his behalf.
That's correct.
Okay, so please go ahead and ask those questions.
Can I just ask Mr. Charles here if he still wants to ask his question? Or would you like to do that?
Well, I have questions from Mr. Charles as well. I'm here for Terry Andrews' questions. If you don't have Terry Andrews' questions, then I suggest that you sit back down in the gallery. I'm happy to answer the questions that you submitted or that Terry Andrews submitted. More than happy to answer the questions that Terry Andrews submitted.
Yep, all right. Does the audience for tonight going to hear what the questions were or not?
Well, that's completely up to you. If you want to say what the question is, then I'm happy to answer it.
Well, we'll do both. Okay, so we'll do both. They're important to ask. At the council briefing session held on the 11th of June 2025, the Mayor, attending as an elected member, publicly introduced an unscheduled and undocumented item by reading aloud the contents of an email that made political reference to 2 individuals present in the gallery. Can the CEO please explain how this was permitted under meeting procedures, and whether allowing such unconfirmed and politically sensitive commentary into the public record without leave or procedural motion aligns with the principles of transparency, impartiality and procedural equality that are expected of all elected members and presiding officers? With due respect, I request that the email be read aloud by the Mayor, now formally recorded as part of the official record.
I have this question as a question coming from Peter Charles, but I'm happy to answer it. Meeting procedures, as you would know, being a past elected member, and Mr. Charles would in fact know as well, do not apply to briefing sessions. You sat in the gallery during a briefing session, and briefing sessions are aimed at providing council members and elected members with background information and facilitating discussions on matters that will be later presented at a council meeting. The matter was considered relevant because the council members were discussing the precinct floor plan and the business case for the Sport and Recreation Precinct, a topic to which the email received by myself directly related. The email did not give reference to anybody in the gallery. It gave reference to nobody and no names were mentioned. If you would like to request access to this email that I received, there is a formal process by lodging an FOI application in which you can do, and no individuals were named at all.
Yep. But that's doesn't answer the question, which was that there seems to be one set of rules for the mayor and another set of rules for other elected members.
I'm not quite sure which rules you are alluding to. The briefing sessions go under Section 90A of the Local Government Act, and the same rules apply to mayors and elected members. It is not a council meeting, as I previously stated.
Yep.
A briefing session is not a council meeting, it is a discussion. The Sport and Recreation Centre was being discussed at that point in time, and every elected member, including the mayor, who is an elected member, is able to participate in that discussion and bring forward anything that they feel is relevant.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Your
Your second question.
Is related to the unequal treatment of public contributions. At the same briefing session, that's the 11th of June 2025, Councillor Stuart Burns, speaking on behalf of members of the public seated in the gallery, made a respectful request to submit questions or comments relating to the Victor Harbor Regional Sporting Precinct. This request was declined by the CEO on the grounds that it was not a public gallery meeting. How is it procedurally fair or consistent that members of the public were denied the opportunity to raise the relevant and structured point, while the mayor was permitted to introduce unsolicited and unrecorded commentary that had not been disclosed on the agenda and which appeared to carry political implications? It's respectfully requested that these questions be answered at the meeting and the responses be formally recorded in the minutes.
As I stated in my answer to your first question, briefing sessions are not council meetings. Briefing sessions are not a public forum for questions or debate from gallery members. If elected members, including the mayor, that are sitting around the table at briefing sessions and discussing topics that we are being briefed on, want to bring something up, they are more than able to do that. The public's welcome to attend and sit in the gallery for a briefing session, but the purpose of the briefing session is to facilitate discussion and provide detailed information to council members, their elected members, enabling them to ask questions, to seek clarification of topics before matters come to the council meeting. The public has opportunities through designated channels, such as the one that you're using yourself tonight, questions from the gallery, or a public forum to ask questions. Briefing sessions are not for public questions and public answers. As I am an elected member, I can ask any questions at briefing sessions or provide any information that I think would be helpful to the discussion during the briefing session.
Again, Mayor, it doesn't answer the question because Councillor Stuart Burns was stopped from making this an intervention and a question, but you were not. So it's you haven't answered the question, but perhaps you're not going to. So
no, I'll try and answer it a little bit more simply so that you can understand it.
Oh, I understand it, Mayor. Yeah, I understand.
You do understand it, so I have answered it fully for you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I understand it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have I'll just point out to you that according to the local government meeting procedures, a person who has submitted a question in writing must be present at the meeting for the question to be considered and shall address the council as directed by the presiding member. Mr. Charles, you have a couple of questions.
I'll just step forward just to apologise. They were my questions. I'd even rehearsed them so we weren't being frivolous or anything like that. Unfortunately, it seems as though Terry Andrews, in his wisdom, has produced two sets of one lot of questions. So I think we've wasted more than sufficient time on this, considering we've only got 30 seconds to ask our questions. Now it's been
Thank you,
an
Mr. Charles.
explosion.
If you haven't submitted your questions,
Thank you
that'll
for
be
your time.
fine.
Well, if you gave me a copy of what Terry was there and you would permit it, I would ask the question, but I'm certain that won't occur.
Thank
Have
you.
a good meeting.
We now move to petitions, and there is a petition 8.1 regarding Rapid Drive's streetscape tree planting. The recommendation is that council note and receive that petition. Would someone like to move that way, please? Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconding, please. Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Do either of you want to speak to the petition? No? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. It was good to actually read through the petition. We're in this chamber to represent the interests and wishes of residents of Victor Harbour, and I think too many community petitions have been not necessarily always listened to, and I think we need to listen to residents' request. I think it's a reasonable request, and I support this petition.
Does anybody else want to speak? All those in favour? Those who are against? That's carried, thank you. Given that you're supporting the position, what is it that you want us to do, Councillor Burns?
In this is not to plant, direct administration to not plant the final trees outside of 63 Rapid Drive. And I also think there should be a workshop to review the tree planting plan by elected members so that we can revisit and have a look at it.
So if I put the recommendation with reference to the policy, council may provide direction to administration not to plant the final tree outside of 63 Rapid Drive.
As per administration's reference on page 9.
Yes, that's what I'm reading.
Yep, and it was talking, I think that's reasonable.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Mann. Any further discussion? Or Councillor Karemba and then Councillor Schiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question. Is this actually a motion, or I thought we just voted on a motion? Is it an amendment on a motion, or what are we doing?
We have voted on the recommendation.
Yep.
To accept the petition.
Yep.
That's finished and closed.
Right.
Councillor Burns has just put a motion forward saying that to provide direction to administration not to plant the final tree outside of 63 Rapid Drive. The person on 63 Rapid Drive was the person who put the petition in.
Yep.
And that's the only tree left to plant on Rapid Drive.
Okay.
And that's his motion.
So it's a motion without notice.
Yes, it's a motion without notice.
Okay.
It relates to the petition.
Sure.
And it's not to plant that tree. Councillor Schiller, you wanted to speak.
Just groping for the microphone. I appreciate that the petition has come in, and any petition that comes to council is worthwhile. But in this circumstance, it's another case where we're looking at a council verge, which is not the property of the landholder. And we have a tree policy or a strategy which has planted a set amount of trees along the roadside. Obviously, we've got targets to try and green our township and city. And so to be consistent, we need to enforce the tree policy and put that tree in. If it's not having, there's no actual reason for that tree not to be there because it's on a council verge, we need to be consistent and put that tree in. So I'll be voting against this motion.
Any further discussion? You have a question, Councillor Krember?
Yeah, I do. So if the person that doesn't want the tree there, wouldn't that be enough reason not to put the tree there? Like, is it that big a deal if we don't put a tree? Just wondering, like, is there any, is it like a carbon credit thing, or is it something, a figure that we have to hit of how many trees we plant? Like, is there any other extenuating circumstances why this tree must be planted there? I mean, if someone's gone to the trouble of doing a petition, it's obviously something that's a bit of a bugbear. Maybe just listen to them and not put the tree in.
That's your, sorry, so there's no discussion from the gallery. I'm sorry. There is no, please be seated. Please be seated. Councillor Kremer, I can't answer those questions, and they sound as though they're questions you're asking yourself, and which we would all be asking ourselves as we debate this motion. So that's something that you and the other elected members will probably have in the back of their mind.
Sorry, just to follow up, if I was asking myself, I wouldn't have said it. I'm just asking for some guidance. Is there some other reason why this tree needs to be planted? Obviously, there's a petition that's come out that says it doesn't want to be planted, so I'm just trying to ascertain as where we're at, that's all.
I'm not aware that not planting one tree will affect carbon credits or apparently go against the tree policy, but this person has asked for the tree not to be planted there. Councillor Henderson.
In our urban growth management strategy, we will be having a percentage of green cover that we will be aiming towards, and this tree will be part of that.
Thank you. Councillor Burns, do you want to close the debate?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. In agreeing to receiving the petition, you asked me to raise the motion, which I have, and in following admin's own comments in saying provide direction to administration to not plant the final tree, and that's what I'm proposing. Now, members may argue that it's not following a plan, but I think that we need to take into consideration there's always going to be exceptions, and I think if we are so dogmatic and rigid, it's not as if we're going to not plant trees. We just need to have a bit of flexibility, and where you've got someone's raised petition has got a lot of the people in the street to also agree. I think we should listen as elected members to what the community want. Now, you know, if someone had said we want all trees removed from Victor, that's a different situation, but we're talking one tree.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. I'll put this to the vote. I'm sorry, no discussion between elected members, please. I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move on to 9.1, outstanding resolutions, and the recommendation is that Council receive and note the report. Would someone like to move that? Thank you very much, Councillor McKenzie. And I have a seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor Mann. Do either of you want to speak to it? Councillor Burns, you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, could I ask that we get the attachments in landscape in portrait? It's too small to actually read, but I have just I don't have any issues with the proposed outstanding resolutions. I'm just wanting for 17, 19 and 20, do we actually have a time frame? A lot of the other resolutions have time frames except for those three.
I'll ask Victoria that one.
through the Mayor. Obviously, the timeframes are allocated to the others because it may have been stipulated by way of resolution, or we have some guidance from another party that's involved. I'll follow up and see if we can get some sort of timeframes, but ultimately we are bound by other parties, state government, Alexandrina Council in both cases.
Are there any further questions about the resolutions? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The draft 2025-26 annual business plan. I'll do those recommendations separately. The first one is that Council receive and note the Community Engagement Summary Report that was presented to the workshop on the 11th of June. Moving that way, Councillor Mann, and seconding that, please, Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Burns.
Thank you. It was good to get feedback from the community. Quite often we don't get too many people, but even though it was a small number, it was still good to get some feedback.
Any further discussion? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. The second recommendation is that pursuant to section 123 of the Local Government Act, we adopt the draft annual business plan provided. Moving that way, please. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And seconding. Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Burns.
Thank you. I've gone through looking at the draft in the business plan in detail. I won't be voting for this for a couple of reasons. One is that, again, we've got a increased operational deficit, and also the rates are above CPI, including two amounts that I believe that we shouldn't be charging the community at this stage. One is the 1% of the sports precinct, because we haven't voted on a solution direction yet, and the other is 1.5 on sustainability of the council. I think, you know, that's why councils are given a budget to manage to the budget, and I think basically taxing the community is the wrong approach. So if it was just CPI, I would consider it, but because it's above it, I can't vote for it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Schiller and then Councillor Henderson. You'll be closing.
I'll be closing.
Closing the debate. Councillor Schiller.
With regard to the sustainability percentage that we have there, because we are a growing council, we've got a lot more infrastructure and so forth, and new stuff that needs to be implemented in the city. So that's something that we need to take into account when we're looking at that, because we're forever growing, and so we need to, that's the basis for that sustainability figure that's in there. So I'm quite happy to see both the sustainability figure and to be forward thinking about implementing monies to be set aside for the sports rec precinct, as we will be able to pay down our debt if we cannot procure the right contract for that sport and rec precinct.
Councillor Henderson. Sorry, Councillor Corambo.
Thank you. Just something Councillor Schiller then alluded to, which I didn't know was an actual decision of the chamber, that if that money extra that would be allocated, that we've taxed our ratepayers for a precinct, we've taxed them on a proviso that the precinct was going to go ahead. Now I hear Councillor Schiller say that if it doesn't get procured, I think was the term, then we'll be paying down our debt. I didn't know that was a decision of the chamber. Is that just what we're going to do now? So we're going to tax in advance, and if we don't go ahead with the precinct, money doesn't go back to the community? Because I believe that would be taking money under false pretense.
This has been discussed a number of times at the 5 budget workshops that we've had, Councillor Karemba, but I will let the CEO
Sorry, Matt, it was a discussion, but it's never been put to the vote that that's the way we're going to go. So it's just a bit perplexing that we're starting to talk about something that hasn't actually been debated or discussed in a formal matter.
Through the Mayor, if I may, I don't think the Councillor Schiller stated that it was a decision of the Chamber, but you do have a Treasury management policy. And if Council, in the adoption of its budget and raising its rates, doesn't progress any of the projects that are contained within that budget, we would then use those funds or any rates raised to pay down debt as per Council's adopted Treasury management policy.
Question, Councillor Karemba.
Yeah, so just confirming, so basically when we go out to a community and rate them for X, if the money doesn't get used for X, even though that's what we're asking for the money, we can then just use that money to pay down anything. Is that what that goes for anything? Is that right?
That's not what I've said. I've said you've got a Treasury management policy, and Council already has raised 1.2% for the precinct.
Yep.
Council's also made decisions in regards to the precinct, and that's in regards to the purchase of the detailed designs. If the private partnership doesn't come to fruition, then Council would be progressing and proceeding with trying to seek grant funding to look at building the precinct itself. So regardless, Council's made a commitment for the delivery of the precinct. At the moment, it's pursuing a private partnership and raising rates accordingly to enable the delivery of a precinct that this community has actually expressed a desire to have for many years.
Okay, just one follow-up question. Would it be counterproductive to the reputational damage that maybe that Council may suffer by rating ratepayers for something that doesn't go ahead and then keeping the money?
That's a decision of the Chamber. It's the Council's decision to decide whether it goes ahead or not. I'll leave that to you as an elected member to make that decision.
I meant as in like we're not able to go ahead. Not that it's a decision of Council, but it's something we're not actually able to do because we can't get grant funding or other extenuating circumstances. I'm asking, will it be detrimental to the what's what I'm looking for, Stuart? Reputation of the Council if we rate ratepayers for something that doesn't go ahead, when we said that that's what the money was for specifically. I understand the Treasury policy allows you to do that. My question is, will there be reputational damage?
If Council gave up on its pursuit for the delivery of Wrexham Sport Precinct under whatever determination it chose, a public-private partnership, seeking grant funding, other partnerships it may look to do, if the Council gave up on it after raising rates and saying it would look to deliver, yes, I would say that would have some reputational damage for Council.
Councillor Henderson, would you like to close the debate?
Thank you, May. Yes,
sorry, before you do, I didn't see Councillor Mann's hand up.
Sorry,
that's
my apologies, Councillor Henderson. Yeah, no, just to, I guess, add, I think, especially with the budget and the operating side of it as well, I think each year it becomes less and less things that I guess as elected members we can look to add in or to options in terms of where we can spend those operational funds as things get tighter and tighter. But I think that in terms of the current budget and business plan, I think the few things that we are putting towards in terms of operational spend are of quite a strategic nature, and I think will have a lot of importance in terms of the city of Victor Harbor and moving forward. So I definitely in support of that. And I think, I guess, in terms of the discussion had tonight around, I guess, raising rates and then what's done with that, and I could be mistaken on exactly what had happened in the past, but from memories, the library redevelopment came to mind, and that was one where Council had looked to do a redevelopment of the library. Council even had grant funding from the state government to do it, but it was more financially responsible not to do that in the end, even though it was sort of promised to the community and talked about, because the quotes came back to be far in excess of what we were contemplating to do. So I think there's two sides to it, and I think it's always around how we act in a financially responsible way and weigh everything up. But in terms of the budget, I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Now, Councillor Henderson. Sorry about
well, what Councillor Mann's just said leads in beautifully to what I was about to say anyway. Yes, as elected members, we need to keep in mind that this is a budget. It is planned for service delivery into the next 12 months. And we know from previous experience that because we don't have a crystal ball, some of our projects will get up, some may not. If we have projects that rely on external funding, if we don't get the funding, those projects probably will not go ahead. Also, some projects come in under budget and sometimes they go over budget. So it's always a bit of a balancing act for our accounts department in particular, but it is just a plan. It's not a fixed shopping list, and we need to keep that in mind. So having said that, I hope everyone supports this budget.
I just hope you realise you said support this budget. This is the annual business plan we're talking about.
Sorry, the annual business plan. Sorry, yes.
I'll now put that recommendation 2 to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Now move to 9.3, which is the draft budget. Now, is this the one where we've just got the new the values results? No? Okay, that's the next one. So the recommendation is that Council, pursuant to Section 123 of the Local Government Act, adopt the draft business budget. I'm getting myself mixed up now, Councillor Henderson. Adopts the draft budget as presented in the budgeted financial statements provided to you. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Do either of you want to speak to the draft budget?
I think I've already spoken to it.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller, would you like to speak? Does anybody want to speak? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't be voting for this. I'm really quite happy with the capital budget proposed because I think our borrowings have been quite low and I think we can afford it. Councillor Mann made a very valid point that 1 year's capital budget tends to be the next year's operational budget, which I acknowledge. But given the backlog of work in progress projects we have, I think we still go through and discuss each of the projects, so it may not be fully realised. It's the operational deficit I have a problem with. Again, each year it's increasing, and I can't approve a draft budget with a constantly increasing operational deficit.
There any further discussion? Do you want to close the debate, Councillor Henderson? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you.
Call a division, please.
Have a division, please. All those in favour? Councillor Mann, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Schiller and Councillor Henderson. That motion has passed. Has carried. We now look at the 2025 rate declaration, and this is where we've had the final Auditor General's valuations have just come in about an hour ago. So there's a slight change to the figure in recommendation 1. You'll see that it now says is that down? Yep. So that's the correct one on the screen. 732. So the first recommendation, we'll do these one by one, that Council, pursuant to Section 167 of the Local Government Act, adopts for rating purposes the Valuer-General's valuation of capital values. And you see those capital values on the screen there. Moving that way, please. Councillor Henderson. And seconding, please, Councillor Mann. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Henderson? Councillor Mann? Anybody want to speak to it? So you know you're speaking to recommendation 1, which is the Valuer-General's valuations. Councillor Karembo?
Thank you, Mayor. I've had a good look at the Valuer-General's methods of valuation. I think they're deeply flawed. You only have to look at the valuations presented from the year 2011 through to 2021 with an average rate increase of plus or minus 5% across all of the state. And then from 21 to 22, there was a jump of 33 1/3% on average. Now, there are obviously reasons why some of that, or there's some reasons why that happened, but I think it's deeply flawed that that is when we had a huge influx of money coming in from the eastern seaboard, and to then value the whole state or jump it up that much, which is part of the reason why our rates are what they are now, the shortage of housing. I think the Valuer General's process of valuation needs to be addressed, so I won't be supporting this figure, because all our rates are basically to a degree based on this figure.
Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to raise similar concerns as Councillor Krimber. I've looked at the Valuer General historically, and quite often I think it's overvalued for rural areas and more based on Adelaide City pricing. I'm not sure that would actually realise some of the valuations that are being rates applied to. So I also believe that it can get skewed by some of the purchases that are made by large developments. So I won't be supporting this particular.
Does anybody else want to speak to recommendation 1? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried.
I call a division, please.
Those in favour? Councillor Mann, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Schiller and Councillor Henderson. And those against, Councillor Kyremba and Councillor Burns. The motion is carried. Recommendation 2. Council declares differential rates for the year ending 30th of June based on the capital values of land referenced to the land use categorised within Regulation 14 of the Local Government General Regulations Act, as also read. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Mann, and seconding Councillor Schiller. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Mann? Councillor Schiller? Does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. Recommendation 3. In pursuant of section 151 and 152 of the Local Government Act, Council adopts a fixed charge of $495 to be imposed on a rateable property within the council area. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson. And seconding that, please, Councillor Mann. Either of you want to speak to that? Anyone want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. Recommendation 4, pursuant to section 69 of the Landscape South Australia Act and 154 of the Local Government Act, Council declares a separate rate for the year ending June 2026 based on the capital values to recover amounts payable to the Hills and Fleurieu Regional Landscape Board. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Mann and Councillor Schiller seconding that. Do either of you want to speak to the Landscape Board, Debbie? Thank you, Councillor Mann.
Yeah, just to note that I'm moving it reluctantly, as I don't like having to collect the state government's taxes for them, and for local residents to think that this is us taxing them. But as we've been told by the state government, even if we don't collect it for them, they'll still bill us for it. So I guess we have no choice.
I think you're absolutely right, and that is a tax that the state government collects for the Landscape Board, but is imposed on council to collect on their behalf. So even if we don't collect that money, as you said, Councillor Mann, the state government will bill us for it. It's one of those very unfair things, charges that we have to carry for the state government. Councillor Schiller, did you want to speak to this? Does anybody else want to? Councillor Kyremba.
I note Councillor Mann saying that he's doing it begrudgingly, but what would be better if we all just voted against it, and if every council in South Australia voted against it, and then send a clear message to the state government, if they need to collect a tax, they can do it themselves. That sends a much stronger message than saying, I'm upset, but I'm going to vote for it anyway.
What would happen in that case if we voted against it and didn't collect it, Councillor Kyremba, is that the state government would charge us for it still. They would send us a bill.
Yeah, I understand what they'll do, but that doesn't mean that we have to pay. What I'm saying is that we send a clear message. If every council decided not to collect this tax, because I've heard it in a few councils now, begrudgingly, it's sad that we have to do it, but we have to do it. No, we don't. We can just basically say, you know what, we're either not going to pay it or we're going to wear it for our ratepayers, to send a clear message to state government. If they want a tax, they can do it themselves and not be their proxy.
One of the things that as a council you might want to consider for the next annual general meeting or the ordinary general meeting of the Local Government Association is for the council, and I'm more than happy as presiding member of Southern Hills Local Government Association to put forward a motion to go to the AGM or the OGM that councils no longer collect the landscape board levy on behalf of the local government, and that local government that on behalf of the state government, and that state government do it themselves. So that might be one way that you as a council may be able to do that, and we can get the Local Government Association to advocate on behalf of councils to do that in a diplomatic way. Is there any further discussion on the landscape levy resolution? In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Can we just do that again? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you.
Call the division.
All those in favour, Councillor Mann, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Schiller and Councillor Henderson. Those against, Councillor Karemba and Councillor Burns. That motion has passed. Number 5, pursuant to section 153 of the Local Government Act, council will fix a maximum increase in general rate to be charged in respect to residential properties which are the principal ratepayer's principal place of residence, being the amount by which the general rate payable exceeds the 24-25 general rate payable by more than 15%, and that such a cap will not apply where the property has been acquired by the ratepayer or has become their principal place of residence after January 2024, and or the increase in general rates payable is due in whole or in part to an increase in the valuation of the property attributed to improvements. Would someone like to move that way, please? Councillor Henderson, and seconding that, please. Thank you, Councillor Mann. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Henderson? Councillor Mann? Councillor Karemba?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a clarification question. Part A, the property has been acquired by a ratepayer or has become their principal place of residence. So is that basically saying if a house is worth $500,000 when it was bought by a ratepayer, 6 months later it's sold, it's then purchased for $600,000, no amendments, no changes, nothing other than the new purchaser has made an increase of that value by $100,000 by paying $100,000. We are now saying that value is now that's the new value. Because that would be market driven, wouldn't it? Versus actually what is the benefit of the land as such.
So through the mayor, so that would, the value of the property would depend on what the valuer general values it at, not necessarily the last market price that was actually paid for the property, because that would have other drivers included in that rather than the value attributed by the valuer general. The reason we have that in there is essentially that there's an 18-month period where the owner of that property would be reasonably expected to know what the property's value is and what the rates would be impacted. So they've essentially been through a whole rate process, a whole rating year, and so any of those any valuation changes or rates changes, they would know.
Just a follow-up question, what would be required to change that from 15 to 10%? Is it just a motion amendment? What do we, statutory requirement? What is it?
Through the mayor, it would be a decision of the chamber to change that. If you reduce that, there would potentially be budget implications depending on the uptake. And we've provided to council what it looks like in terms of the properties that will go up by more than 15%, but you haven't factored into your budget any additional amounts for if you reduce that to 10%, there would be a budget impact.
So we're saying there's properties that are going to be rated over 15%.
There are some properties that are rated over 15%. We provided all those graphs during the modelling.
Yep.
Most of those are because of improvements. to the property, like moving from a vacant land to a residential, or having significant improvements done to an existing property. But it's very few that would not have a reason to object to their valuation if they went up by more than 15% for no, improvement activities.
Is there any further discussion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you.
Call a division, please.
Those in favour, please stand. Councillor Mann, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Schiller and Councillor Henderson, and those against, Councillor Karemba and Councillor Burns. Where are we up to? Number 6, that pursuant to section 160, 161, 162 and 165 of the Local Government Act, Council endorses the provision of mandatory rebates as detailed in attachment 1. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Councillor Burns and Councillor Karemba. Would you like to speak to those?
Thank you, Mayor. Historically, those organisations provide great services to the community, and this is a way where we can provide some rebates for them, and I'm supportive of it.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Number 7, the discretionary rebates. Someone would like to move that way. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And seconding discretionary rebates, Councillor Burns. Do either of you want to speak to this? No? Anyone want to speak to it? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. And then the number 8, pursuant to section 181, Council declares that rates for the year ending 30th of June 26 will be payable in a single instalment or by quarterly instalments. Someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson, thank you. And seconding that, please, Councillor Mackenzie. Either of you want to speak to that? Anyone want to speak to that? Councillor Karemba.
Just a question, does this preclude people from going into payment plans?
No.
Okay.
Any further questions? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. We now move on to 9.5. Graffiti management policy. Recommendation is that Council adopts a reviewed graffiti management policy provided attachment 1. Moving that way, please. Thank you, Councillor Schiller, and seconding Councillor Burns. Either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Schiller?
Just that the adjustment of wording has simplified it, and just a few tweaks, and it's come up well. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Councillor Burns.
Thank you. I also agree. I think the changes make the document policy read well. I think it's sad that we even need to have a policy, but so it's the world we live in.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The footpath policy. The recommendation is that Council adopts the reviewed footpath policy as provided at attachment 2. Someone would like to move that way. Councillor Schiller, thank you, and Councillor Henderson. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Schiller?
Yep. This has gone to the Disability Access and Inclusion Committee to have a look at, and it's provided a bit more clarity as to why footpaths need to be accessible to all members of the community. And you'll note that it's discussing an issue that came up when we've had our petition, which was a fruitful discussion when we talked about Cudmore Road, looking at locations for footpaths, and we've got a relatively new issue coming out with the increase of bins on the curbing. So by sort of taking note of the policy in its revised form, hopefully we can get a better outcome for all within our community.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to this? Does anybody want to? Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. I've read through the amendments. I'm quite happy with what's being proposed. I did have a clarification question on page 77 of the policy document, point 9. I just wanted to ask the CEO if work undertaken by council workers or contractors employed by the council administration have a work quality clause or warranty on their workmanship, so at least for a period of time to minimise repair costs paid for by the community.
Well, yes, whether it's be through council staff or a contractor we usually have those provisions built into the contract that we acquire, and council takes responsibility for the work that it does.
Is that like a 12-month period? Defect period?
There's a defect period, but it specifies it depends on the contract. It would be at least 12 months. Sometimes it may be more depending on the contract.
Okay. And the contractor would pay for the repairs if
it's all dependent on the specific contract of depending what happens, how the works are damaged. If it's something to do with the way in which the concrete has failed, then it would be the contractor's responsibility. If someone drives into it with a truck, then it would be an insurance matter.
Correct.
Any further discussion? Let's close the debate. Councillor Schiller?
I just have a query. In the commentary, we've talked about the pedestrian strategy. I know there was a little bit of touch up in 2022. My question is when the next review may occur and how thorough that review will be.
Thank you, and through the Mayor, and thank you for your question, Councillor Schiller. That has been tasked to myself, and it's one of my priorities over the next few months is to kick that review off and have that work undertaken within the next 6 months.
But back to the question, is that going to be a substantive review or just a light touch-up?
A substantive review.
Thank you, Mark. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Schiller, did you want to close the debate? No, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The 2025 National General Assembly, the business papers. So you would have seen all of those come through, and the recommendation is that Council endorse myself to vote in favour of the motions as detailed in section A and B business papers, as most of the motions align closely with Council's own strategic direction and long-term priorities. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson, thank you, and seconding that. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Mann. Do either of you want to speak to that? No, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, you just do you have a question? You want to speak to it?
Thank you. I can't support it for the single reason that there's nothing in here that actually relates to Councillor Victor Harbour. I have no problem at all if it did for the Mayor as the elected person to go and raise those issues, but where it's raising issues for other councils in other states or talking about Commonwealth policy, I think it's really relevant. We should just be focused on Victor Harbour Council and the residents and those issues that relate to us.
At the National Congress, the issues that relate to local government as a whole and local government councils are brought forward. Many of the issues, while they don't relate to us specifically, are very much fall in line with our strategic direction and us as a coastal council, us as a growing council, and us as a council. It's it's quite important to work with other councils and assist them where possible, and they assist us when we have taken matters perhaps at the state AGMs where they've related to our council and something our council wants, but have also been something that affects other councils in a bigger picture. So yes, you're quite right. They don't assist us directly, but they do assist councils and local government. Any further discussion? Councillor Karemba.
Do we have an asylum seeker policy? Because that was one of the things you're voting on. So I'm trying to work out how that aligns with Victor Harbour. I think what I'm trying to get at is this is a bit of grandstanding, I would think, from a lot of local governments getting together to go sticking their nose in things that aren't their business. A lot of these things that I read were all federal issues, and seeing as local government is not even recognised in the Constitution, we'd be well placed just to get back to our knitting.
Local government doesn't knit, Councillor Kremper. That's probably not a good way to advocate for local government. We don't get back to our knitting. We advocate on behalf of our communities. There may be communities that have a lot of asylum seekers, a lot of refugees living in their community, and we advocate for our communities, even though there are many things that we don't do. There is a motion without notice coming up tonight about nuclear power, and people may have their own views, but people will be looking at perhaps advocating or not advocating in relation to that motion. So many times we advocate for our community and for things that as a local government we don't necessarily get involved with. But I'd ask you to be respectful to local government. It's the tier of democracy that this country is built on. Is there any further discussion? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour and those against. That's carried. Thank you.
And call a division.
Voting for is Councillor Mann and Councillor Mackenzie. And Councillor Schiller and Councillor Henderson. Voting against is Councillor Karemba and Councillor Burns. (9.8) is the draft Local Government Community Engagement Charter, the consultation submission. I don't think council staff got any submissions back or any questions from elected members at all. And looking at it, it's very, very similar to our own community engagement policy that we have been enacting. The recommendation is that council make a submission to the local government's consultation as per provided in attachment 2, if someone would like to move that way. Thank you, Councillor Schiller. And seconding, please. Councillor Mackenzie. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Schiller? Councillor Mackenzie, does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Was there not an outstanding resolution, item 9, the elected members workshop? So once we got the community feedback, before we submitted anything through to the government, we've got the government draft proposed charter, and we're going to have a elected member workshop and then decide on the response. And isn't that not skipping?
I'll ask the CEO to.
We reference your outstanding motion in the report.
Yes.
So once this has actually been implemented, it actually states once the charter has been implemented, then we would look at the way in which we would actually review our framework of how we consult and engage with the community. It's actually referenced in the report.
Yes, I understand, but when we discussed it, the intent was once we get the draft that and community feedback that we have the workshop, not once it's been implemented.
No, that wasn't the case, but
well, I know what I asked for.
I know what the resolution says too, Councillor Burns.
Yep. Okay. I've seen the video of the meeting. I know what I asked for.
This is not a forum for debate between staff and elected members. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The 2025 Community Satisfaction Survey, and I'll do that recommendation on block. We have had a workshop on this, and there will be updated reports coming back to council in relation to that. So would somebody like to move those 3 recommendations on block? Thank you, Councillor Burns. And seconding that, please. Thank you, Councillor Mann. Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Burns?
I agree with the recommendations, but I also think that it's important for administration and elected members to take the feedback from community surveys, especially about dissatisfaction, and work to address those issues which this will work towards.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Yes, this is certainly the objective of this recommendation. Councillor Karemba.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to concur with Councillor Burns and just point out that notably that only 29% of our community is satisfied with the decision making being in their best interests, and the perceptions of fair and reasonable rates being at 27. I mean, if that isn't an alarm bell or a pull up, I don't know what is. But at the end of the day, we'll see what happens when we come to the budget and which way this chamber decides to roll. But I would encourage elected members to start listening to the community. Otherwise, yeah, I'd hate to see what happens at the next election.
I think we've done the budget. We've done the budget. Any further discussion? Councillor Schiller.
Just a comment about any of the items that are shown to be lamented by community and identified as areas that we need to look at, and just taking disability access and inclusion as an example, obviously, because I know a reasonable amount about how that process occurs. Just looking at our resourcing for some of those things like disability access and inclusion. Sure, we have our Disability Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee, and we have policies coming through the chamber, but how much resourcing we are putting in to allow staff maybe to be looking at ideas that come either through the chamber or come to the Disability Access and Inclusion Committee. Obviously, we have a manager of community and wellbeing, but whether she has enough resources to take those ideas and allow someone within staff to investigate them, and that be the same with any of the other areas where we're looking and where there may be shortfalls in satisfaction, whether the resourcing for those areas is being identified. And I know as an elected member, that's not my job, but I'm just flagging that as a thing to look at so that we're not looking at things in silos. We've sort of got a broader picture of what's going on throughout the whole of the organisation.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Councillor Burns, do you want to close the debate? If there's, oh, sorry, Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think just that, I guess pulling out from the feedback we've received, and I think what we clearly seeing as a theme through all of our consultation, whether it's the budget and the feedback from that, is around, I guess, the concern in the community around Victor's growth and how we manage that. And I think it's particularly good that the report and the consultation expresses that as well, and it shows that, though our town is an elderly population, I guess second oldest population in Australia, as I'm aware, there's still a genuine concern in the community about our younger residents and the imbalance in the housing types. And so I think it's, again, important to acknowledge that each time we see that, and I guess continue to advocate and to work to help address that concern, because I think it's a real issue that I think, especially in the past 12 months, is becoming up more and more, and again is in this report as well.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. And Councillor Karemba.
Just a question. So am I reading that right, that the sporting precinct and the car park are now equally important to the community, or close to? Is that right?
Yep, you've got in here the Regional Community Sport and Recreation Precinct remains the highest ranking major project across all groups. So that's with residents, businesses and non-residential ratepayers.
But it's had a decline. Is that right?
Although it's
Decline in interest.
Although its perceived importance declined in 2025, it still holds the top position. Notably, the McKinley Street car park project also sits at a similar level of importance.
Okay.
And I think people are realising in town that car parking is a problem in town, and as we continue to grow as a council, and our growth is predicted to be very strong, then car parking will become a major issue. And I think that's one of the things with a growth council like ours is that investing in the infrastructure that's needed for the future, such as car parking, such as sport and recreation and community precincts, is very, very important for councils like this. Councillor Burns, do you want to close the debate?
Yes, thank you. Just want to say I think it's really important that we continue with getting feedback from the community, and I also agree with you that we should be investing in the future of infrastructure, but what we can afford, what the community can afford, should always be the overriding concern.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The Fleurieu Aquatic Centre joint venture quarterly report, and thank you very much to the joint venture committee for providing quarterly reports to the council. It's appreciated, and it keeps the council and the community up to date as to what's happening. And the recommendation is to receive and note that report. Councillor Henderson moving that way, and do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Schiller. Do either of you want to speak to the report? Does anybody want to speak to the report? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. I also agree it's good that the Joint Management Committee provides us with quarterly, and the other councils with quarterly reporting. I did have one question on page 107 where it says administration is also refreshing the Fleurieu Aquatic Centre strategic plan. Is that not the responsibility of elected members in each of the councils to do the strategic planning or any refreshing or review? Doesn't mean that we don't work with administration, but like I see elected members excluded out of that, and I thought strategic planning was part of our primary remit.
Yes, it is. As councils both have their own strategic plans, and any changes, significant changes, obviously would come back and be workshopped with the councils. But the joint venture is given the remit of undertaking its review now that the subsidiary has been dissolved, looking at what the previous subsidiary had in place and refreshing it according to the needs and wants of the councils.
Is there any further discussion? Councillor Henderson, do you want to close the debate? No. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Community development, the Masters Games. The recommendation is that council lodges an expression of interest to host the 2026 Masters Games in Victor Harbour and approves a budget reallocation of $40,000 in the 25-26 annual business plan and budget from the Sports and Recreation Strategy Infrastructure Grant Pool, contingent upon a successful expression of interest and event proceeding. Would somebody like to move that? Gee, I might move that because it was something that was very dear to me on behalf of a community member. Would you like to second that, Councillor Burns? Thank you. I won't speak to it. I'll let it speak for itself. I think that the number of people that came up to me in shopping centres and talked about the prospect of Victor Harbour and surrounds hosting a Masters Games was, you know, quite incredible, and I'm sure many of you have been approached as well. So I think that if this gets up, it'd be great for not just for Victor Harbour but for our whole region and for sport and recreation in the region, and to attract more younger people to the region. Councillor Burns, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm supportive of it, but just had a question. with a 40% reduction out of the sports grant, what's the balance and what impact will that have on sport recreation clubs during this 2025 sixth budget year? Not that I'm against it, I just wanted to understand the impact.
Great.
Thanks for the question through the Mayor. The reduction in the budget would be 60%. It's $100,000 in their current budget, so $40,000 out of that budget. There is a recurrent allowance at the moment that follows through with Council's commitment to the Dragon Boat Club as well, in terms of space for them. So it would still leave $60,000 within that budget allocation.
And the second part, is it going to reduction impact any of the other clubs
Well,
in Victor?
through the Mayor again, it's hard to predict what that might be. The last round of the current financial year's funding applications drew no applications whatsoever for the last amount that was there. So it just depends on the needs of the clubs at the time and whether they're in a position to put in. So very hard to predict. Yeah.
Any further discussion? Councillor Henderson, Councillor Karemba.
I think this is a great initiative. I've actually competed in 4 Masters Games and they are large events. This will bring in huge visitation to the whole of the Fleurieu region.
Thank you. Councillor Karemba.
I hate to rain on your parade. While I agree the Masters Games is a great concept, I think the timing is terrible. It's during the school holidays, number one, so it'll affect the ability for people to actually stay down here. Number two, even Alexandrina has not indicated any interest because they have budgetary constraints. Obviously, we've got a bigger pool of money than they do. It's just, to me, there's so many red flags in here. I mean, even Sport SA they've had limited interest in hosting, and the delivery model is changed to try and fix things up. So we're kind of like a bit of a guinea pig. And I think there was somewhere in the commentary that said that if it actually goes off or doesn't go well, it makes us look bad. So yeah, I can't support it. I like the idea of the Masters Games, just the timing is terrible.
Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, I guess in terms of looking at the budget allocation for it, I see there's about $4,000 for the opening and closing ceremonies. So I assume we're not going Paris Olympic kind of vibe there. But I'm not sure whether we can do dragon boats down in Cannon Lakes and flaming torch transported via horse tram, and maybe a bit of kerosene around the whale tail sculpture that finishes it lighted up. But yeah, I guess if we use it strategic, there can be that economic benefit to the town. And I guess in looking at with these significant events, it's often that financial benefit to the community and our businesses is often comes from afterwards. And I guess with hindsight, we won't know exactly, but I think trialing something like this is a good move. And I guess it's making sure we can keep the reporting and get those details of what that financial benefit or potentially detriment are for future decision making.
Thank you. Councillor McKenzie.
I'm on a similar page to that. I'd like to see how the return on investment is by going ahead with one of these, and then obviously through the reporting afterwards we can determine whether it's worth pursuing this in the future again, or just leaving it as a once-off event.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Any further discussion? Councillor Schiller.
It's just a minor thing. If we are successful, and it's stating here that the staff will be responsible for creating the logo, it's not here nor there, but a suggestion could be that you could put a minor prize out there and encourage our students and anyone within the community who might like to design that particular logo as a way of getting the community involved. I mean, like I say, it's not something that I think is a strong thing that I'm totally needing to see, but just a way to bring the community in maybe. So just an idea.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Just in closing, I think if it is going to be during school holidays, I think that's great because it means that people are freed up. They can bring their children down here. It's the Masters Games, so it's the sort of their parents will be participating in it, and it becomes a great community and family event. The community involvement, I think the opening and closing ceremonies, you know, the community love getting involved in Christmas parades and different things, and it can become a, you know, quite a vibrant community affair. And I think the idea for a prize for a logo is another great way of involving the community. And you know, if we have a sports and recreation precinct that is up and ready by then, or nearly ready, or being built, it's another way of celebrating that and involving that. So I'll put that recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. Can I have a division, please? All those in favour? Councillor Mann, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Burns, Councillor Schiller and Councillor Henderson, and those against, Councillor Karembo. We go to 10.2, gifted assets. The recommendation is that Council receive and note the gifted assets report. If someone would like to move that way, please. Thank you, Councillor Burns. And seconding that, thank you, Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that, Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for administration for getting the asset, gifted asset. I think it's good. I think the plan of attack, the approach is a good way. Once we vote on this, I'd actually agree with administration that should we desire to progress this, then the CEO should call a workshop so that we can look at steps 1 and 2. I think that's the right way to go. I think what's being proposed is a good approach.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Any further discussion? Did you have any questions about this, Councillor Karembo? Because this report is what you asked to come to council at the last council meeting.
No, I'll just concur with Councillor Burns. We probably do need a workshop. I don't think this is something that we should just let slip. Finding money is getting harder and harder, and costs to council are getting greater. So I think we should try and look at other ways of raising revenue, or at least offsetting costs to council. So a workshop would be encouraged.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that's where private council and private partnerships come in, because, you know, often we can't afford to do things on our own, but if we partner with a private organisation, then we may be able to afford something that the community can be proud of. If there's no further discussion, Councillor Karembo?
Sorry, just clarification. This is gifted assets. So this is like developments and stuff of that nature. These are things like that there are developers making money versus what you were talking about, which is a private-public partnership. They're two different things, aren't they?
I think developers wouldn't go into a private-public partnership unless they were going to make some money or to get something out of it, Councillor Karembo. Any further discussion? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Fleurieu Peninsula Tourism Agreement. The recommendation is that Council endorse the funding agreement with Fleurieu Peninsula Tourism as provided attachment 1 in partnership with Alexandrina Council, City of Onkaparinga and the District Council of Yankalilla for 2 years. If someone wants to move that way, Councillor Burns, thank you. And a seconder, please, Councillor Schiller. Do either of you want to speak to this, Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. In reading through the agreement, I think it's a low cost, and we really have a 2-year period, given there may be some doubt about the future of the Tourism Authority, depending on elections, but it gives us an opportunity to reassess and see what they've actually done for a mineral investment. And if they're able to keep bringing tourists in, then we benefit as a city.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller, did you want to speak to this? No, does anybody else want to? Councillor Prember.
Yeah, I won't be supporting this. This is just another thing of death by 1,000 cuts. We seem to be bleeding money for all these organisations when, I don't know, I really struggle to believe that people wouldn't come down here if we didn't have a tourism group or if we didn't have the RDA. And while they may increase some, I just think that, you know, Victor and the surrounding areas are beautiful enough that they would attract people without incurring more cost to the ratepayer. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it just seems to be we're sending money out to all these groups, and it's just, I'm starting to question the validity of these things.
Thank you. Any further discussion? No, I'll put it to the vote. Do you want to just no, put it to the vote? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The 12.1 Open Space and Environment Yearly Summary. A huge amount of work has been done by our Open Space and Environment team. So a big thank you very much to that team for all of the work that you have done. The recommendation is that Council receives and notes the yearly summary report. If someone would like to move, Councillor Henderson. And seconding that, please, Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to it?
Just to say, yes, I agree with you. An enormous amount of work. Well done, team.
Councillor Mackenzie? No. Does anybody else want to speak? Councillor Burns and then Councillor Schiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I also agree. I think a lot of work has been undertaken by the teams over the last year, and it's good to get a report through. I've been on some of the committees that have been involved with some of this work and can see firsthand what they've done. I'm supportive of this, and I think it's good to get yearly updates. I would only like to request that elected members have a workshop in July on the tree management program so that we can look and discuss that. But the rest of the work, I think, is terrific.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller?
Yep, same as the rest of the elected members. It's a good resource. It was good to see the dissection of where our open space team are and how many employees we have in certain sectors, and to see that when needed, they're being moved around. So it was a great report.
Thank you. With leave of the chamber, I'd like to put in a motion without notice to say, to give our formal thanks to the Open Space and Environment team for the work that they have done. Are you, or can you give me a nod if you're happy with that? Yeah. So I'll just do that as a motion without notice. You need a no. If it's a motion without notice, I'll need a second and not just leave with the chamber. Yeah. Oh, we'll finish this motion first. So I'll put that motion for vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. I'd like to move a motion if someone would like to second it to give thanks. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. All those in favour of that? Those against? Sorry, Councillor Cranbrough, you're for, in favour? It's unanimous. Yep, thank you very much. Regional Community Sport and Recreation Precinct, the Recreation Facility Concept Floor Plan. The recommendation is that Council endorse the concept floor plan for the recreational facility within the Regional Community Sport and Recreation Precinct as provided at Attachment 1 for the purposes of progressing detailed design. Someone want to move that way? Councillor Karemba?
I'd like to put a formal motion to defer till the workshop is held with the stakeholders as per the emails.
Formal motion to defer it. Do I have a second of the formal motion? Councillor Burns. All those in favour of the formal motion to defer it?
Can I ask a question?
There's no debate on a formal motion.
Just a question about the timing.
There's questions on a formal motion. Well, was it the time and a place?
Two questions.
The motion needs to have a time and a place for it to be adjourned.
Adjourn it to a July council meeting in order for the key stakeholders.
A workshop at the council, a workshop before the July council meeting.
Sorry, what was that?
A workshop before the July council meeting.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Councillor Schiller?
And who's going to be involved in this workshop?
The key stakeholders, just to get their tick of approval before we go spending money on a set of working drawings that then will be needed to be amended if they're not happy with them.
So we have a formal motion on the floor. There's no debate on the floor. And all those in favour of the formal motion? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. So this will come back to the July council meeting and there'll be a workshop before that. The minutes of the Disability Access and Inclusion Advisory minutes, the recommendation is that council receive and note those minutes. Moving that way, Councillor Schiller and seconding Councillor Henderson. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. CEO Performance Review Committee, 20th of May. The minutes, the recommendation is that council receive and note the minutes. Someone like to move that way? Councillor Schiller, thank you. And seconding Councillor Mackenzie. Any questions? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority Charter Review. The recommendation is that council endorse the amendments to the charter. Moving that way, Councillor Burns and
just putting up a motion to defer to the July council meeting because I believe that the information presented to elected members is not correct. We had a session on the 11th of June where we were presented with the version that had been voted on by the board of the Fleurieu Waste Authority, and elected members had requested changes, and none of that's reflected in this document. And I think it gives an opportunity to have that amended and to be resubmitted at the July council meeting.
Do I have a seconder for that formal motion? Thank you. It's a formal motion we've got. All those in favour? Those against? That formal motion is lost. We go back to the recommendation that council endorse the amendments to the Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority Charter. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And seconding that, please. Councillor Mackenzie. Do either of you want to speak to that? Anyone want to speak to that? Councillor Burns and Councillor Karemba.
Thank you. I don't believe the documentation is correct, and I don't think it represents the requests and views of elected members. But you know, I'm only one vote.
Councillor Karemba.
I'm just wondering why those recommendations were put forward but not entered into this document. It's a question for the CEO.
Through the Mayor, happy to answer. I actually emailed you all in the response I provided to Councillor Burns. There is nothing stopping Councillor Burns moving his amendments, and I explained how to do that in quite detail to him in that email. So there is absolutely the option to do that, and the council needs to endorse those changes to be submitted. I also explained the process that we'd been through in terms of presenting the draft charter to all council members, seeking feedback in December. We then brought it to the December council meeting. That was endorsed that there was no changes, and it was actually given direction from the council to submit there was no changes. And then a final draft came back to that workshop, which we had just recently. But I articulated quite clearly how Councillor Burns could bring forward his suggested changes that were made by Councillor Burns at the workshop. There was no recommendations at the workshop, there were suggested changes.
If there's no further discussion, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you.
Call division, please.
All those in favour, please. Councillor Mann, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Schiller and Councillor Henderson. Those against, Councillor Crember and Councillor Burns. We now move to the Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority's third budget review. Recommendations that council approve this. You've got that in attachment 1, if someone would like to move that way. Councillor Schiller, thank you very much. And Councillor Henderson, thank you very much. Do either of you want to speak to it? Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Whilst I appreciate there has been some marginal savings, again, we're faced with a operational deficit, and I can't support that.
Any further discussion? Put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Victor Harbour Horse Tram Authority, reappointment of Audit Committee members and Deputy Chairperson. I'll do those 2 recommendations on block, being the reappointment of Nigel Catt and their reappointment of Laura Hodgson. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson, thank you. And seconding that, please, Councillor Mackenzie. Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Byrne. Oh, hang on, sorry. Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to that?
I just want to say I think these have been outstanding members, and I'm happy to move that we reappoint them.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie?
Just likewise what Councillor Henderson said, they're both great candidates for the position.
Thank you. Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not disputing that they are good or qualified people. I just think that audit committees should be changed and rotated after 2 years. Fresh set of eyes looking at things and fresh perspectives. We do that with other audit committees. So I just think that whilst they've been good, it doesn't hurt to change it occasionally.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Motions on notice. The ICAN Cities Appeal. Councillor Henderson. Councillor Henderson, would you like to propose?
Sorry, point of order.
Yep. I've just realised I've just missed them. There are no matters of urgency. There are no questions on notice. Are there any questions without notice? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question. I understand the beachside market agreements coming up for renegotiation, and I understand there's some issues with getting that completed. I was just wondering if the CEO could update us. They've been operating for over 30 years, and I'm just concerned if there's any problems. Maybe all sorted, I just don't know.
Through the Mayor, I'm not aware of any issues. I'm happy to take a question on notice, but nothing's been brought to my attention about that, but I'll follow up.
Thank you.
Any other questions without notice? No. Motion without notice. Councillor Henderson, would you like to propose your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. The recommendation is that this council acknowledges the 80th anniversaries of the US atomic bombings of the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6th and 9th, 1945. We honour the 210,000 plus victims of these attacks and the Hibakashu and Hibakunasi who continue to live with the legacy of nuclear weapons. Secondly, that note that our city, town is deeply concerned about the grave threat that nuclear weapons pose to communities throughout the world. We firmly believe that our residents have the right to live in a world free from this threat. Number 3, that we note that any use of nuclear weapons, whether deliberate or accidental, could have catastrophic, far-reaching and long-lasting consequences for people and the environment. And fourthly, that we endorse the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons cities appeal, a global call from cities and towns in support of the UN Treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons, and calls on our national government to sign and ratify it without delay.
Would you like to speak to your motion?
I would. And firstly, I'd like to correct a statement you made earlier, Mayor. Sorry. This is purely around nuclear weapons, not about nuclear energy and not about nuclear medicine at all. It's purely about nuclear weapons. So I'll now speak to it. In August 20...
Sorry, I should get a seconder for that first, actually.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mackenzie, seconding that. Thank you.
In August 2025, it will have been 80 years since the United States bombed the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. To mark these somber anniversaries, our council can pass a commemorative motion to remember the victims and survivors of these attacks. So this is the first thing that I'm calling for. The International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, or ICAN for short, is a coalition of non-government organizations in 100 countries promoting adherence to and implementation of the United Nations Nuclear Weapon Ban Treaty. This landmark global agreement was adopted in New York on 7th July 2017. The ICAN Cities Appeal, which is what this motion is about, is a global call from cities and towns in support of the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Nuclear weapons target cities and civilians. A single nuclear weapon can destroy a city and kill most of its people, and several nuclear explosions over modern cities would kill tens of millions of people. In 2022, a survey was conducted and found that 76% of Australians believe that their government should sign the IPNW, the United Nations Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. To date, several councils in South Australia have already signed. When I did the research for this, those cities were Adelaide, Mount Barker, Port Adelaide, Enfield, Port Augusta, Prospect, West Torrens and Whyalla. One of the responsibilities of councillors is to consider the health and well-being of all residents of all generations. So supporting this campaign would show considerable good faith in the endeavour of that commitment to our community. In June 2021, ALGA members unanimously supported a motion backing the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. In May 2025, an international campaign to abolish nuclear, ICAN Australia reached out to the mayors and councillors, inviting councillors to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This motion, if passed, means that we will join 50 other Australian councils, as well as hundreds worldwide, in endorsing the ICAN Cities Appeal. This is a consideration of the best possible future for humanity, for our shared future. To commit to this action by agreeing to the proposed motions, we will contribute to the ripples of peaceful actions taken daily by people everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Schiller, would you like to speak to this?
Question. Are we able to, there's 4 parts to this motion. Can we please split? I'm happy to do the first 3 and then maybe we split off the 4th for another motion. Is that possible with the permission of the first, the mover and the seconder?
You happy?
Can we not do them on block? Because I want to go through each section.
With the mover and the seconder, happy with that? Doing it one by one?
I prefer them on block, thank you.
You prefer to do them on block? Okay. So they're on block. Does anybody, Councillor Mackenzie, you seconded this, didn't you? Do you want to speak to it?
Just to say that it's a good campaign to bring to the chamber for our discussion and consideration. I haven't known too much of the background of this previous to Councillor Henderson raising it, but it seems like a good campaign to support.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. Before I start, could I request leave the meeting for some extra time because I may not finish within the 3 minutes allocated. I'll try to be quick so I can, but I'm not necessarily a fast talker.
If you're not able to have the 3 minutes, then perhaps we can ask the meeting at the end of that.
Okay, thank you. Whilst I can appreciate Councillor Henderson's concerns about nuclear warfare, I think we're all concerned about nuclear warfare, requesting that the Victor Harbour Council, in other words, the ratepayers and residents whom we represent in this council chamber, many of whom lived through the Second World War, to honour the victims of an atomic bomb attack on Hiroshima and Nagasaki that occurred 80 years ago in the midst of a horrific global war, I believe is disingenuous, naive and a massive slap in the face of all servicemen and women that fought in the Second World War. At each council meeting, elected members pay homage and respect to the servicemen and women who defended Australia today and those who protected Australia in the past, too many of whom lost their lives to ensure the freedoms and democracy we have today. 30,000 Australians died in World War II, 65,000 were injured. In bringing this motion to the floor, I'm not sure who Councillor Henderson thinks our servicemen and women were fighting 80 years ago. 30 million soldiers and civilians were killed during the Pacific War because of the Japanese military aggression. Where's the motion to honour those victims? Nazi Germany killed over 85 million people, most civilians, during the Second World War. Where's the motion to honour those victims? The 1945 Japanese military were war criminals who killed over 14 million people in China alone, and they killed over 40%, that's 72,000 of the 180,000 Americans, Australian, New Zealand, Indian, Canadian, Filipino, Dutch and British prisoners of war. Japanese soldiers killed over 300,000 in the Nanjing massacre, raping and mutilating citizens and using life prisoners for chemical and biological weapon experiments. Whilst nuclear war is a terrible, terrible thing, it was war, and war is terrible. Some people in the chamber appeared to have forgotten that the Allies were fighting against military fanatics who vowed to use every man, woman and child to defend Japan. It was the Japanese who attacked Pearl Harbor and Darwin, not Australia nor the US. Yes, it is extremely sad that 70,000 Japanese civilians and soldiers were killed in the initial blast, and an estimated that a further 140,000 died from injuries and radiation within 1 year of the attack. That's a total loss of 210,000 deaths. But it was war. 80 years ago, the world was fighting for its very survival against multiple aggressive fanatic military regimes. It's said that President Truman, in signing the order to use atomic bombs on Japan, had made his assessment that an estimation...
Point of order. I don't believe Councillor Burns is speaking to the actual motion. This is about nuclear.
Councillor Burns, I just need to hear the point of order, please.
I believe Councillor Burns has gone completely off topic. This is purely about nuclear bombings, 2 nuclear bombings, and honouring those cities of civilians. It's not about a discussion about war per se and who killed who and who fought for who. It's purely about nuclear weapons. You've gone totally off track.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Burns, can you please keep your commentary specific?
It is to do with and relative to the nuclear attacks. And also, I would argue that that was a breach of Section 86 of the Local Government Act, and also a breach of Section 2013.
Well, we're not arguing here. We're not arguing here. I'm just simply saying to you, could you make sure that you keep your commentary to the particular recommendation?
I was finishing. I was talking about the specific atomic bomb attacks on Japan. Okay, he made the assessment to use atomic bombs to minimise, to get a decisive military solution to end the Pacific War whilst minimising deaths on both sides. And they'd estimated that it would have been 1 million American soldiers would have died in a conventional military assault on the Japanese mainland, as well as 4 million Japanese. Why is this important? Because another option was considered. On July 1945, General Curtis lobbied President Truman to move 15,000 bombers from England to Okinawa to increase bombing missions on.
Councillor Burns, can I just remind you, we're not talking about a history of the Second World War here.
Yes, we are.
We're keeping it to the specific recommendations that are down here.
Okay. Then maybe you'll accept this. In 2007, Japanese Defense Minister Fumio Kuma referred to the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki as, quoting, something that couldn't be helped. He said this was in the context of Japan's 1945 military and government refusing to surrender or negotiate peace and their preparedness to kill every man, woman and child in Japan to preserve their fanatical ideology of world conquest, as Hitler and Nazi Germany also did. In the same year, 2007, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Japan did not want an apology from America, as he felt it would trigger unneeded political fallout, referring to re-raising the horrendous war crimes committed by Japan. He said it would be more meaningful for the US and Japan to aim for a safer and more peaceful world. So if the Japanese are not asking for an apology from anyone, nor asking for any honouring of bombing victims, then why are people who were never involved in the war asking for it? I think that section 1 should be dismissed. I won't be voting for it. I'm happy with 2, 3 and 4. I'm not going to, I don't disagree in doing it on block.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. I'm not sure that there's, section 1 is not asking for an apology. It is acknowledging the atomic bombings. There's no apology being asked for. But so thank you, Councillor Burns. Any further discussion? Councillor Cranby, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. I had a big speech prepared, but I think Councillor Byrne covered it all. Essentially, yes, nuclear weapons are terrible and no one wants to use them. But if we have to live in a world where they're at, I'd rather be one where we actually have them and that we can use them. And it's actually those nuclear weapons that stop other people from using them. And the fact that Iran was bombed smithereens is the best thing since sliced bread. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no need to, for the community or the council or anything to actually worry about this motion, because it does anything to do with rates, roads and rubbish as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah.
Any further discussion? Councillor Schiller?
Recommendation part 1, 2 and 3 I'm comfortable with, but part 4 was the one that was sticking with me, because without knowing what the implications of that treaty would be, I don't think that I, as an elected member, should be voting on a treaty that I had 1 week's notice to take that information in. I think I would have taken the first 3 and put that through, but I need to know more information about this treaty and the organisation that's putting it forward.
Any further discussion? Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, no, there's definitely, I guess, a lot of debate on each side of this one, and I can see clearly there's some elected members in favour of some of them, and others in favour of others, but not some. So I think in terms of, I guess, where I sit on this is I completely agree with some of the discussions that have been had. I think the intent of Councillor Henderson and what she put up this is a good intent. I know there's been discussions around where local government sits and what kind of matters that we should be advocating on, and that this motion probably sits within that discussion, but it's here and we've got to discuss it and vote on it. I think the other thing though is, I guess, the technicalities around weighing up might not support the motion for a certain reason, or the wording, or will support it but not for an acknowledgement or an honouring, or I guess, and I appreciate that there are things to be tweaked in it, but that is the motion that's on the floor. And I think we've had discussions in the chamber and around even elected members not comprehending and not grasping around when a motion is put forward and when it's lost versus when it's carried, and what that means and the ramifications for it. And I guess weighing up a few of the tweaks to the motion that and doing it off block that some elected members would want, and weighing that with the idea of us not supporting it, and then by implication being in support of the opposite cause. So I guess it's a difficult one. I think where I see it, I definitely, in terms of the intent and what's going up, and I guess what Councillor Henderson's put forward, I think in this case I'm willing to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
On the back of what Councillor Mann and Councillor Schiller have said, can I change my mind and go with one item at a time? Because it seems like the councillors' opinions are split around the different items. So if we handle them separately.
Sorry, just a question. Are we able to just change motions because the vote might not be what we're aiming to achieve? Because that's what seems to be happening here. The motion is being put as is. Let's vote on it and let's see where everybody lies on these things.
The discussion wasn't closed, and Councillor Henderson, as the mover, has decided to split it, so it's not being done en bloc, but each recommendation is being done on its own. That has been agreed by the seconder, so the motion has been varied by the mover and the seconder, and we'll do them all individually, take them as individual motions. I'll just double check with Victoria that can be done, but that's my understanding of the meeting procedures. It is the meeting procedures. So the move of a motion or amendment may, with the consent of the seconder, request leave of the meeting to vary, alter, or withdraw the motion or amendment. So she's able to do that. So Councillor Henderson and Councillor Mackenzie will do the first one. The first motion, which acknowledges the 80th anniversary of the US atomic bombings. So you're moving that one. All those in any more further discussion?
Just a query on how we're supposed to acknowledge this anniversary as a council.
I think just in the reading of it, just as we acknowledge the diversity in our council, or we acknowledge
the motion is that we're going to, as a council, acknowledge the anniversary of Hiroshima, and I can't remember the other.
I think.
So how is it just as a representation within the chamber today? Is that the intent? I will ask that to the mover if that's possible.
Yes, that's the intent. This would be the acknowledgement. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Kremba?
Yeah, just a question. When it says here we're honouring the 210 victims, were they all civilians, or were there military victims in that 210,000?
It doesn't say. It just says the victims.
So you're asking us to say we're acknowledging that there were military people within this 210,000. So you're asking us to honour military personnel. Is that the intent of this?
There are
just want to be clear.
Plus human beings. Some of them were in the military, some of them were mother and children and babies, and some of them were following generations. So yes, all of those people.
So military people included that were actually part of the war and killed our soldiers as well. Yep, just confirming. Great, thanks.
Councillor Henderson.
If I may answer that, I believe they were almost all civilians.
Do you want to close the debate on that first recommendation, Councillor Henderson? No. I'll put that first recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. The second recommendation, again moved by Councillor Henderson and seconded by Councillor Mackenzie, noting that our City of Town is deeply concerned about the grave threat that nuclear weapons pose to communities throughout the world. We firmly believe our residents have the right to live in a world free from this threat. All those in favour? Your question?
Yeah, my question is, how did Councillor Henderson come to the conclusion that she's speaking on behalf of the city and town Because I thought only the mayor was able to speak on behalf of the city and town. So did she do a survey to confirm that that was the case?
The mayor is able to speak on behalf of the council, Councillor Karemba, Councillor Henderson, just like you, would be out speaking to members of your community and speaking on town. And when you vote here, you are voting on behalf of the elected members, voting on behalf of the residents, the population. I speak on behalf of the council. You are all here representing Victor Harbor. That's what you were elected for. Councillor Henderson, did you want to close the debate on this? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. Recommendation 3, moved by Councillor Henderson and seconded by Councillor Mackenzie, notes that any use of nuclear weapons, whether deliberate or accidental, would have catastrophic, far-reaching and long-lasting consequences for people and the environment. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Recommendation 4, moved by Councillor Henderson and seconded by Councillor Mackenzie, endorses the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons cities appeal, a global call from cities and towns in support of the United Nations Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, and calls on our national government to sign and ratify it without delay. All those in favour?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to it too.
Just a question. Does the treaty include what defines people that are in that treaty? Does that include, you know, countries like, for example, Iran and other countries that, you know, North Korea? So they're not parties. So we're asking the council to sign to a treaty that people that actually have nuclear weapons will never sign. Is that correct?
The United Nations, I don't believe that North Korea or Iran are part of the United Nations.
Okay, so what we're asking is then to get rid of all our nukes, but allow them to have their nukes. Is that? I just want to be clear about what we're doing here.
The United Nations Treaty is on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. Did you want to add anything, Councillor Henderson?
All the links are in the documentation and they could have been followed up by councillors should they have needed that information.
Councillor Schiller, you had a question.
I'll just speak to it. I understand what Councillor Henderson's trying to do here, but I don't believe that I have the right to support a treaty without knowing what the implications of that treaty might be. I know nuclear war is a terrible thing, but we have allies. We have the United States of America, an ally, and obviously they are as we've seen in the chart, they are one of the highest countries with nuclear weapons. I don't condone nuclear weapons whatsoever, and they are a hideous thing. But if the treaty prohibits things happening with, basically, nuclear war could be seen as a deterrent. And although I don't agree with it as personally, I don't think I have the right to determine how that occurs, and that is not for me as a councillor to make that decision. That's for our defence forces to be making the call on that, I think. So I feel awkward not to vote for it, but because I am unsure of the implications, I won't be voting for it.
Any further questions? Did you want to close this part of the debate? No. In that case, recommendation 4, I'll put to the floor. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I need to do a casting vote, and I will be voting for the recommendation. I think that the more that we can call on the government and the United Nations to prohibit nuclear weapons and the proliferation of nuclear weapons, which has not just consequences for the people that are killed at the time, but has consequences for generations to come, for the planet, for our ecosystem, the better we will be. So I'll be supporting this. And that's that motion on notice finished. Confidential items. We do move into confidence.
Sorry, Ms. Jenkins, I have another motion without notice.
Motion without notice. I beg your pardon. I didn't see that one. Motion on notice. Oh, motions without notice. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you. So the motion is administration prepare a report for the July 2025 Ordinary Council meeting to establish a steering committee for the development of the strategy to retain and attract young people, comprising firstly a staff representative from each local high school, a school/college captain from each local high school, a representative from Business Victor Harbour, the mayor and 2 elected members, and council administration representatives, including the youth development officer.
You've discussed this with the administration?
Yes.
You just emailed it through. Okay.
Could this not come back as a motion on notice?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether or not it's best for a motion on notice.
Well, I think the motion without notice is to bring a report to the next council meeting. So I guess that would just delay it a month by putting a motion without notice.
Yeah, that's for a report rather than to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm happy to accept that for just a report. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Crember?
Is there any cost associated for this question for the CEO to put together a report? Because I know that you don't like to put motions without notice if there's a cost to council. So I'd hate for us to have some sort of double standards.
That's all right, Councillor Crember. I take each motion on notice as it comes, as I've told you before. It's not double standards. This isn't going to require a new budget line, as you know, other motions may do. And I'm sure that a report coming to council looking at this at the next meeting would be appropriate. So I will be accepting this. Do you want to speak to your motion? I'm sorry, second it. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Do you want to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so earlier tonight we adopted a budget including the development of a strategy aimed at attracting and retaining young people. It's something that we've been discussing a lot in the chamber, and there's a lot of community consideration and consultation around how we can retain our young people and make Victor Harbour a more attractive place to live for our younger demographic. Effectively, this motion is to start that process, and we don't have any, I guess, time to wait with this one. And I think putting together this steering committee to help guide the strategy and the consultation. We've seen, I guess, over my years in local government, I've seen some really good strategies, and I've seen others where sort of the consultant gets the payment and then 9 months later the strategy comes back. But I think this one, because of the strategic importance of it, we need to be actively have our key stakeholders engaged from day dot to be our community champions and to get in and amongst the schools and our young people to really advocate for participation in the consultation, but also help shape what that strategy will look like. I think we want to make Victor Harbour a place where our young people find it very hard to leave. We want to make it as attractive as possible for them and to help do what all of our strategic documents say, whether that's our community plan or our draft UGMS. It's trying to lower our demographic, and a strategy in local government land is the first step in that path. And I think we don't want to delay. We don't want to speak about it. We want to get on with making the strategy and start delivering on the actions that will come out of it. So this is really that first step, and I think something that might not necessarily happen in the development of a normal strategy, but I think because of the strategic importance of this one, I think this may be the best way of going about it.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to this? No. Does anybody want to speak? Councillor Burns?
Thank you. I'll be supportive of this. I agree with Councillor Mann. I think there's an opportunity to actually get to hear from the age demographics that have really been a silent minority within our community, and it gives them the opportunity to actually provide some insights and a different set of eyes and perspectives than what my age group and others may have. And I think that, you know, anything like this aids elected members in being better informed. So I think it's important we do it.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak? I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Now, before we move into confidence for the last item, I just think, can we just have a 5-minute break? If that's all right with you? Thank you. And then we'll be moving into confidence.